Hello and welcome to another weekly update, and time to go through some of the things that I've been doing this week. Been traveling a bit this week, so it's which is always fun. It's always interesting, but also nice to be back. So I put out 3 blog posts this week, which I just want to go through, and then there's a couple of other things happening out in the community as well. So the first thing that happened kind of this week is that I made some tweaks to my homepage, which is not especially exciting, but that it's worth going through just some of those changes and why I made them as well, because your homepage is your presentation to the world, and it's where you talk about the things that you think are most important. So I made a couple of tweaks there, and the first was around these weekly updates. I'm bringing them, further up to the forefront, making them more important, and just giving them more visibility, giving them more proximity, and then also really bringing in some of the other things I've been spending more time talking about, which if you've been following these weekly updates, you'll be aware of. But if you're a new visitor coming to my site or my blog for the first time, it might not be so obvious that I've been spending a lot of time talking about development with teams, development with bot framework, and with cognitive services. So I wanted to bring those to the forefront as well. And really that just meant as well just a kind of polishing up and a rewriting of the kind of title and the tagline and stuff as well. So a couple of changes there, but really just highlighting me spending more time looking at things that aren't purely Skype for Business, expanding out a little bit into these other communications and unified communications based technologies, and it speaks really to a broader sense that more and more like unified communications and UC and all that stuff it's not a tool, it's not a product that you put in a box, it's a feature, and it's something that needs to be consumed by applications everywhere. And so that means there isn't one place you go for all this stuff. It's it's a variety of different tools, it's a variety of different techniques. Microsoft give you lots of different tools in this toolbox, and it's up to you to find the right place to utilize them and find where it works best. And whether that's these standalone tools, things like Teams, which try to aggregate together lots of different sources of information into one place, or whether it's development APIs and SDKs that allow you to take communications and embed it into applications. Okay, so changing tack slightly and just talking more generally about, not actually even really talking about communications in its strictest, most technical sense, but talking about something really interesting that happened this week. And that was Microsoft put out a presentation translator. Now, what this does is incredible. It builds on decades of research from Microsoft, and in translation, in text to speech, in doing all this stuff in real time, in the power of the cloud. And what they've done is they've taken all this information, all this technology, and broken it down and made it so simple to consume that it's a PowerPoint add-in that you can add to any presentation that you give. And when you do that, when you give the presentation, overlaid on top of your slides are the subtitles of the words that you are speaking in real time. So your voice is going up to the cloud and is being turned into text and then overlaid as subtitles in real time, which is impressive and very useful for those that have hard of hearing, and maybe where English isn't their first language. It helps, but also more impressively, that can also be translated into a number of different languages in real time. So participants, people listening to your presentation, they can also go and visit a website that is also updated in real time, and they can choose the language that they want to hear and see your talk represented in. So they get their own subtitles in their own language. So it's pretty amazing. I think it's going to make a big difference for how we communicate, how we give presentations. Certainly, I give talks to people where English isn't their first language, to mixed groups that speak lots of different languages. I'm always very aware that when I go to these conferences and things, English is always the primary language, and actually for lots of people there, that's not their primary language, but it's become the sort of de facto language of technology and of the internet. And it's nice that there's the technology and the ability now to allow people to concentrate on the body and the structure and the meat of the talk, and not necessarily be needing to divert their brain cycles in doing translation work as well. So it's incredible. I did a blog post about it. I did a video about it as well, because it's actually the best way to see it in action. It's just to see a screen capture of it being used. So that's what I did. And yeah, I thought it was really good. Okay, and I think this happened yesterday. Yes, it did. Yeah, it's been a long week. So Ben Lee, who also maintains a blog, a bit of a disclaimer, he also works for Modality Systems, but he blogs about, he's an excellent Skype for Business consultant, and yeah, he blogs at bibble-it.com, and he has been doing in the kind of past couple of months, he has been doing something really interesting, which is going around the Skype for Business and the UC community, asking everybody more or less the same question, which is, everything's moving to the cloud. Everything's, Microsoft are really pushing Skype for Business online. What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen to my job as a support consultant, as an infrastructure consultant, as a deployment consultant, as an architect, as a developer, as a tester, as a DevOps guy, all these different roles? Where do they fit into Microsoft's cloud strategy? And that's those, the results of those questions he is writing up as a series of articles, which is really interesting. So I was very honoured to be asked to contribute to this as well, which I did a little while back, and it was really I really enjoyed the experience. Actually, it took me a long time to get around to doing it, because there was lots of other things that had to be done first, and there's lots on the to-do list. But when I did, I was really glad I did, because it was quite a cathartic experience of forcing me to sit down and really think about the future, about Microsoft's cloud strategy, and what it means for people like me who develop on that infrastructure. So I have that all written up. I wrote it all up, gave it back to Ben. He took out all the spelling mistakes and made it look better, and has published it on his blog. So I'm going to link to that in the notes. So I encourage you to go and read that, because if you want to just kind of like an overview of where I think the state of communications is, and the state of the communications market for developers in Microsoft's segment of that anyway, then that's definitely worth reading up on. Okay, so what else has been going on? Well, this week was Inspire, which is the renamed WPC Partner Conference. So there were a couple of announcements that came out of that, more kind of business focused. We saw some things around new SKUs and new offerings in the market. The one thing I am going to link to is a Microsoft partner site resource. And it's a really good, it's four slides, and each one links off to a mini blog post, and it's a really wrap up of the day. So all the highlights, all the key announcements, all in one place. So if a bit like me, that maybe Inspire isn't the primary kind of focus of your interest, because it is a bit more businessy and a bit less technical, but you do want to keep the finger on the pulse of what's going on and the announcements that are being made, because they will still affect you, then this is a good way of just wrapping up. It is slightly UK focused. I think that only really affects the last session, which is the regional section. So I think the others are relatively relevant to anybody. So that's definitely worth taking a look. Just to get a kind of quick update around what's been happening at Inspire. And then finally, the last thing I'm going to leave you with is another one of these, it's another good collection of resources actually, and that's the Microsoft Community Hub. which I'm fairly certain is new because I haven't heard about it before. And it's not just UC, so it's split into a couple of different sections. And actually it covers the whole community. So it's a list of blogs, it's a list of shows, it's a list of conferences, it's all the slides from previous events, it's a list of different user groups and the events that they're holding as well. So and it's not just UC, it's development, it's Microsoft Cloud, it's pure Microsoft, it's all based on Microsoft community. So it's a really good resource to just kind of go down and make sure that you're getting the best out of the Microsoft community, because there's some great content being put out at the moment by lots of different people across the spectrum, and it's always easy to kind of miss things out if you're not aware that they're happening. So I think that's all I wanted to say this week. So have a great week, and I'll speak to you again next week.